This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to the OI podcast, the Otago Institute podcast, conversations with experts from the worlds of arts, sciences and Mataranga Māori, and happy Easter. This is being pre-recorded because the studio is closed on Good Friday. So I'm in here in the studio today by my lonesome Dr Barb and Peter Deerden. Professor Peter Deerden, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Good to speak to all of you.
That's great. Hey, we have basically no preparation for this episode. I've just asked you along at the last minute. It's the Easter episode and we are talking chocolate, rabbits and eggs because it's Easter.
Righto. Okay.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Well, yeah,
chocolate, got to be amongst our favourite things.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And of course Good Friday is not really the day that the chocolate kicks in, right? That's actually only on the Monday.
That's right, yeah. Not being a religious person, I'm quite confused as to when you're supposed to produce the chocolate.
Oh, well, it can't be.
And having kids, it's like that just appears. And,
chocolate is absolutely, for those of the religious persuasion, which I guess Easter is fundamentally all about, is about the resurrection. So that's on the following day.
Right,
so Good Friday is obviously the crucifixion, which is the hot cross buns.
Okay, so I make hot cross buns tomorrow.
Hot cross bun tomorrow, with the cross traditionally is not sweet icing. It's made with a sort of flour paste to make a white cross across it, which is sort of like the bread of Christ. That sort of
exciting times, right? And of course, it's all built on a pagan.
Built
spring
on
ritual,
which
is why there's chickens and
that's why there's eggs and all this new life and rabbits. So completely inappropriate in many senses for New Zealand for the context, because of course we're not going into spring, we're going into autumn,
and we don't like rabbits.
And we don't like rabbits, but we kind of like eggs.
Yeah,
got to be said still, and. I don't know. I think that Dunedin really has mixed feelings about chocolate, to be fair, after the whole Cadbury's thing.
We just drink very dark chocolate. Yeah. Very dark coffee. It's just dark. Anything dark.
Yes, no. And I mean, we can still have Whitakers, right?
Yeah. Good. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, that all out of the way. I've got a little bit of a public notice because, of course, the by-election is coming up. I hope you are registered, Peter.
Of course, absolutely.
Sure you are.
Vote early, vote often.
Vote early, vote often, exactly. So for all of those out there, if you are in the Dunedin electorate, even if you're not, if you're listening to this from wherever, make sure you are registered. Make sure you're enrolled, www.vote.nz. You can go to that site. You can check that they've got your correct address, your correct details, everything there. You can check that you're on the Māori or the general voting roll. All of that stuff's there for you to check yourself ahead of time. You can still enrol. You may not get your postal vote papers in the mail now, because they will start to come into mailboxes on the 10th of April, which of course is only a week away, because of course everybody's hearing this on Good Friday, which is tomorrow from when we're recording, right? So they will come to your box. If you don't get your papers, go just to the iSight place not the iSight, but the bit behind it. That's the DCC in the Octagon there, and ask for a special vote, because you can do a special vote if you're enrolled. So go on the computer, computers everywhere, libraries, everything. If you haven't got one at home, if you haven't got access to them, the librarians are fantastic. They absolutely know everything about helping people do everything, and they're very helpful people. But of course you can go there, the electoral office. They've got rooms set up there. They've got people to help you enrol. They've got all the special voting forms. You can enrol right up until midnight on the day before election day. So that's the 11th of May. And you can vote right up until 12 midday on the dot on the 12th of May. So, yeah. Get yourself ready. And of course, once you're registered for the general elections later in this year. So grab a couple of friends, take them along and just make a party of it and just enrol as many people as you can. Enrol, vote.
Yes.
That's just all I want to say.
As Andy Zoltzman says, if you're not committing voter fraud, then you don't care enough. Right? This is
We're not encouraging people to
we're
commit
not,
voting fraud.
but short of that, go get enrolled, get a vote. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's the most kind of activist thing you can do is to vote,
absolutely.
really. It's
and send your kids because there's I don't know, 16, 17, there's that period where, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to vote. Just go down, sort it
and
out.
You can actually enrol before you turn 18 if you're going to be 18 by the time the election comes round.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of those little things. And for me, I am a firm advocate for lowering the voting age to 16 so that everyone can do it when they're getting the driver's licenses, basically, when they've got a peer group at school.
Well, I think we should wait. No, we shouldn't do this. But I think we should weight people's votes on the basis of how long they have to cope with the consequence of their vote, right?
Exactly.
So young people's vote should be more valuable than older people's votes because they're the ones who are going to have to live longer in the country formed by that government. Now, obviously, that would be
Obviously,
hard,
that wouldn't be something that we would advocate, but there's something to be said for that,
young people get in there and get voting.
Yeah, your vote is really important, and just another plea. Now, for the by-election, the OI have done a by-election special, and we have to thank our very kind sponsors there, Highgate Partners, independent financial advisors who have paid for the studio time. We have invited all 14 candidates, and all 14 candidates came along and did an interview with us. And we asked them all exactly the same questions. We told them in advance, this is the format, but we're not telling you the questions. So it comes to, we don't want pre-recorded, they've written down the answer and who knows where they've got the answer from. We want them to say what they really think. So we invited everyone along. Everyone agreed to come along. We have 14 interviews, 14 candidates. We asked them all 5 sort of warm-up questions. So donuts or scones, Peter Deerden?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think scones.
By far and away the most popular answer.
As long as you make them yourself.
See, now that's an interesting trigger, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's nothing like a scone straight out of the oven.
Yes, exactly, yeah. My husband's a huge fan of scones, but yeah. And we asked them the critical question about who nominated them. Oh. How long have they lived, where have they lived in Dunedin rather, and what's their favourite place in Dunedin? And I think that nomination, obviously, with recent events in council, who nominates people, we decided that that is all public information and you can just look it up on the electoral website, but of course people don't.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that there needs to be a little bit more, I think, what should I say? People need to take responsibility for the fact of nominating someone. It's quite amazing how many people said my mother nominated me.
It's a secret. I don't think my mother would nominate me.
Well, to be fair, I'm sure that no one in my family would nominate me. It was quite interesting. And some people obviously take it very seriously because it's an endorsement, more or less. Only one person couldn't remember who had nominated them.
Oh, weird.
Which I did think was slightly odd. But anyway, tune in to the OI podcast by-election special to see who that one person were. And then, of course, we did ask, and there's a really great write-up in the Star today's Star. And of course, the topics for the long form questions where they get 60 seconds to answer are an array of things that we thought are important and kind of ring with the arts and sciences, Mātauranga Māori. So they included things like DCC, how they could support the tertiary education institutions, which of course you're part of. The solutions for the South Dunedin issues with the hydrogeology out there, the approach to the challenge of homelessness,
nice,
the role of mana whenua in local governance, how to pay for infrastructure projects equitably without cutting public services, the success or failure of council support for arts and culture, and the importance of council processes and procedures. So that last question there gives them an opportunity to say what their experience with a governance role is, and for them to explain in their words what they think the difference between governance and operational is, and how they believe they will act with transparency and accountability.
Yeah, I was a bit. I I found it very strange in the first round of the council elections, going through that booklet trying to work out, who I wanted to vote for.
Yeah.
I could find nobody who actually mentioned the university, which is still our biggest employer as far as I know. It's like, why are we not?
Technically, I think that the health services is slightly ahead from the 2023 census, and I have got the numbers here.
But still, it's a massive.
Oh, it's massive.
Employer.
It's massive.
It's sort of like, let's not mention the university.
Yeah, so no, it's absolutely craziness. It's 13.2% from education training and 13.5% from healthcare and social assistance. But of course, that's all of social assistance.
We have a medical school.
And we have a medical school, yeah. So there's quite a lot of crossover there. And of course, that doesn't include, that's just employed industry. That doesn't include the 20,000 students that are also in Dunedin from the education and all of those spin-offs that come from education. Yeah. And the other thing that I found very interesting was the number of people who thought tertiary education and just thought university and didn't include the Otago Polytechnic in it.
It's an awesome polytechnic.
Yeah, and really long. I mean, the Dunedin School of Art, which is part of the Polytechnic now, has been there forever.
Yeah, well, my son's doing automotive engineering. He's working out how to ruin cars for fun. Hopefully, what he's working out is how to convert them all to electrics, because we're going to need that. Yeah. The quality at the Polytechnic is fantastic. They're really great people.
And the yes/no questions at the end were also very interesting, because there's 10 yes/no questions, which I pushed for a yes or a no, and a large proportion of those were, had you been on council since October, would you have voted for this? Just to get them to say where their position was, because a lot of people. If you're running as a candidate, you can say whatever you like. But once you're on council, you vote for something. Yes, no, you can abstain, but you can't say, oh, maybe, I'm not sure, indecisive, if this or that. And a few of the other questions were, have you read the long-term plan? One of the short questions was, have you read Kafka's Trial? I only got 2 laughs out of that, and I was like, well, I thought that was funny.
It's good. But
in a rueful sort of way.
But I think those are. I mean, one of the things that you can do as a candidate is be sort of creatively. These are difficult issues, and as you say, you have to say yes or no. I think that's. Sounds like that I should go and listen to this.
Yes, definitely go listen to those podcasts. Like and let's get on to talking about rabbits.
Yeah, sure.
So why, Peter Deerden? Tell us about you and who you are.
Oh, so I don't. Well, I have a really good story.
You're not a rabbit farmer.
I'm not a rabbit farmer.
So you're a professor in the
biochemistry department at the University of Otago. Yesterday on a podcast, I was called Professor of Pessimism at the University of Otago.
Oh no, not at all.
I say bad things.
I find you always quite optimistic.
I was a bit miffed. It wasn't on. But I'm a geneticist, really. I study lots of things. So one of my jobs is to really understand fundamental biology and how it works. Right. And I work on lots of very strange things, but I also do quite a lot of work in modern methods of pest control. And so occasionally I get asked to talk about pest control and how are we going to deal with the plethora of invasive insects and mammals and weeds. And
of course, this is where rabbits come in.
And this is where rabbits come in because we are afflicted by too many rabbits. Apparently, in the past, there were things called acclimatization societies that
they were
bring rabbits into the country. Yes. And people talk about this as if it was hundreds of years ago, but I have these memories of seeing signs around the place.
It wasn't that long ago. There was. I've got a story about this because Minaret Station, which is at the back of Lake Wanaka, there's a thing in the ODT, because of course the ODT is hundreds of years, not hundreds, but 150 something years old. I'm going to get corrected on exactly how old it is, but it's very old.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's old.
Minaret Station, which is across at the back of the lake there, they actually gave all of the farmhands and everyone a public holiday day off to celebrate the release of the first 2 rabbits onto the Minaret Station farm.
Because they wanted their profits to decline.
Obviously, this is people coming from a largely British, European background where rabbits are food.
Yeah.
And rabbits were brought into England, into the UK, by the Romans for food.
Yep.
They're not native to the UK, although I think hares are. But yeah, rabbits driven out by the Ice Age, I guess. They may have been there previously.
Yeah.
I can't comment on that, actually. I don't actually know if they were there and driven out and then reintroduced by the Romans. Anyway, and they make good eating. They have very good food.
Yeah.
And the kind, I think there was a kind of an idea that it was like, if you were poor, you could always go and catch yourself a rabbit.
Yeah.
And you'd always have food to eat. So there was very little idea of the destruction that they would.
But then we also brought in hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs. They're fantastic animals, but actually they eat all our insects. They eat birds' nests.
They eat the eggs, they eat the baby birds,
and
they spread diseases.
And not many people eat hedgehogs.
Yeah, I think that's Beatrix Potter. I blame her entirely for that. I'm sorry. I love Beatrix Potter. But
just imagine at the back of the tail of little Tiggy Winkle or whatever her name is, there's a recipe. Hedgehog pie.
It's.
But so we've got all of these invasive things, and obviously we have things that come in all the time. So wasps, German and common wasps came into the country a few years ago. We've got hornets in Auckland. There was mosquitoes, some Aedes aegypti, so
the
rather nasty mosquitoes discovered in Auckland today or yesterday.
Was there? Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so these things come in all the time, and so one of the things that I spend my time doing is trying to find ways to think about how do we control these populations and how do we eradicate them. I mainly work on insects, but we also have to think about rabbits and possums and stoats and all the other things.
And of course those stoats and weasels and all those mustelids were brought into New Zealand to control the rabbits, which had gone wild. The rats and the mice, I believe, just came on the ships by themselves. Nobody purposely brought rats and mice in. But all of those mustelids were brought in purposefully in order to try and control the rabbits that they had brought in purposely as this kind of, there's not enough mammals running around that we can eat.
Apparently we tried foxes too, but luckily they didn't take.
Thank goodness they didn't take. They did take in Australia, and I think they are quite a pest there. Yeah. But Australia's slightly more, their indigenous, I should say, fauna and flora are slightly better adapted because they have evolved with predators. With those marsupial predators that fill that sort of same niche.
Most of our birds freeze when they have because I think the idea is that the things that were predators were aerial, so it was eagles and things, and so you freeze and you can't be seen against the ground. But
doesn't work so well.
Doesn't work when actually you smell and
and also sort of the ground nesting and the flightlessness and all of those attributes.
So it's been a disaster. This was a bad idea. But and both from an economic sense. I mean, rabbits are a serious problem in central Otago and Mackenzie country, and so we haven't just messed up the natural environment. We've also messed up the environments that we're trying to make food out of.
So how does genetics help us here?
Well, so that's a really good question. So I think that genetics provides a bunch of tools that might help us to control some of these animals.
Right.
So some of it is just about monitoring. So understanding how many of something is in the environment, or if a population is increasing or decreasing, we can use genetic technologies to do that. So just sequencing bits of DNA. And
rather than counting them.
Yeah, so basically we can sort of monitoring them. And
that's really useful for other means, like the traditional means of removing pests from the environment, because you have to be able to somehow reliably say, yes, it's working, no, it's not working, it's here, it's not working here, it works better in these circumstances, whether it's seasonal or whatever, if it's been raining or whatever. So getting that information about what things are working or not, that relies on very good systems of monitoring the populations. And of course populations vary anyway, naturally through the year.
Yeah.
So how does genetics help you monitor those?
Oh, so
how can you get a number from genetics?
And so that's kind of quite difficult. So I guess there are a bunch of technologies which are helpful here, and people might have heard about things like environmental DNA, where you actually look at the DNA in streams or even in the air these days and just say what sort of things are out there. So that gives you an idea of, are there possums in this area? Are there rats in this area?
Because that's how they're using wastewater to measure COVID.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly the same thing. So one of our projects that I'm trying to we're thinking of getting underway is to think about how can we use that data to count the number of possums and the number of rats. But that's really hard, right? So that's really on the edge.
Because you don't know if it's like a complete possum that's giving you a whole massive amount of DNA, or a little bit of DNA from a bunch of possums. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just difficult to do that. So we're trying to find ways to do that, because that would be incredibly useful to be able to
quantify that.
Be able to say, there's 7 possums in this environment,
or
right?
even there's 100,000 or 10,000.
Yeah. I guess the other thing is that when populations are increasing or decreasing, because of the way that affects the amount of genetic variation in a population, we can use that to say, okay, the numbers of this thing are decreasing or increasing. So that's not using eDNA. We actually have to sample genomes, and we have to go out there and collect samples. But it does give us the possibility of saying, for example, for things like wasps, where it's very difficult for us to go out there and count them all.
Right, because they're very small and they kind of angry when you try and catch them.
We can sort of say, okay, are these things increasing or decreasing? And then for things like incursions, so by incursions you're meaning something that's just come into the country,
right?
We can ask questions like, okay, so if we find two specimens of this thing, like the fruit flies that came in, or the hornets, are they closely related, suggesting that that's actually one event, or are they distantly related, suggesting
and that tells you whether they've
problem?
Bred once they're here, basically, or whether there's just multiple entries.
Or if exactly.
Yeah.
So
and that's really crucial, I think, as well, because there's a lot of things that come into the country, but they can't reproduce here. So they basically come in and you might see them, but then they die.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that that's quite common. If you look at every couple of months, MPI, Ministry of Primary Industries, published a list of things that have have been found in the country that shouldn't be here, and so many of them are actually linked to particular. So they come with sort of locations, and those locations are often the same because it's where actually entomologists work. And so they're going, this thing has come into the country, but we don't see it establishing.
Right.
And so I think a lot of things come into the country and don't really establish.
And by and large, I think things come into the country through Auckland and through ports. I mean, Auckland because that's where the most people come in.
Exactly.
But also climate and... it's warmer, it's wetter, all those things are generally good for things. The harsher the climate.
Things are coming on planes, they're coming in boats.
Planes and boats. So ports and airports, and the bigger the port, the bigger the airport, the more people coming in, the more chance that something's coming in with it. So those are all the kind of factors that kind of control that. And I guess that's where the big kind of concern with climate change is, because previously things may have come into the country but not been able to establish because basically they've come from somewhere that's warmer and nicer, but as we warm the entire country and as we kind of destabilise ecosystems more, the more destabilised an ecosystem, the more likely something that's coming in an incursion then manages to kind of
that is exactly right. And I think the two things that are really working against us. One is globalization. We're doing lots more and more trade. Everyone's getting their Temu packages and things, and so
we should ban Temu.
The Sheen Halls, I think it is.
Biosecurity comes down on Temu. You heard it here first.
I'm not actually pointing. They're not too bad because actually that's stuff that's in a factory and is packaged.
It's largely stationary and sealed.
Exactly, and stuff, but car parts. There's the things that come into the country and they maybe sit on the wharf for a while. Secondhand cars. Yeah, I mean we used to assemble them here. Now we don't.
Those big things that sort of sit around. Yeah.
So I think the hornets are a really good example of this. So there's this outbreak of the yellow-legged hornet in Auckland.
Yes.
We're not sure whether eradication is going to be possible. There's a lot of work going on. MPI is working hard. But we know that actually yellow-legged hornets have also invaded Europe and have spread. Where do
they come from, the yellow-legged
hornets? So they are sort of Southeast Asian.
Right.
And they've come through trade into Europe, and now they've spread as far as England. There was a report yesterday that they were in the Algarve. So
by yesterday, you mean Wednesday?
Wednesday, yeah, I think it was. In Portugal. So they spread all the way through Europe.
Right.
That's probably where we got ours from, through some sort of trade.
It's kind of gone up there. It seems like Southeast Asia's closer.
Yeah.
But actually we have so much trade and so
Exactly.
much travel between Europe,
Yeah.
and we always have.
And I think that's warming climates too. This is a warm species, and it's just going, it's looking nice. Even Hull in England, it's not drizzling all the time anymore, so we can live there. And I think that Dunedin is an interesting location, because actually I think we're at this place, there are quite a lot of pests that have come into the country. They're in the North Island that haven't made it here.
And there's actually a really quite a clear biogeographical line around Banks Peninsula and Canterbury, where there's things like kawakawa, for instance, that comes down the coast but then stops there, because there's I don't know if anyone here in Dunedin has ever been to Christchurch, but on occasion it tends to be warmer.
Tuesdays, I think that's called.
There's a lot of flora and fauna, plants and animals. When you just look at their New Zealand distribution, native species, indigenous species, and they stop around there. And there's a couple of those in New Zealand, and it's basically there's a threshold there that's biologically relevant in the climate. And I use kawakawa as an example because it's a species that really likes that coastal lowland on the edge of forest.
They should love it here, right?
Yeah, but it's too cold. But you can grow it. You actually can grow it in Dunedin as long as you pick a sheltered spot. So as long as it's not getting frosted, it's fine.
Do you know about the guy in Taieri who's growing a kauri forest?
Oh, yeah, I have heard about that,
but, again, these things don't grow here naturally, but if you get them through the frost...
And with the kauri, there is a difference there, because there's a lot of species that will grow this far south but won't reproduce naturally. And Jeff Bayliss, ex-professor of the botany department, he had the most amazing garden up on Hill Street, is it? That runs up to Mornington there.
Oh, yeah.
And he had basically the entire flora of the Hen and Chickens Islands growing there in Dunedin. And he said, they grow, but they don't always reproduce. And of course, he's a professor of botany. He spent his entire life finding the exact microclimates.
That's right. The rest of us can't be bothered.
But it's an interesting thing, because it's not, and that's the same with, as you were saying about incursions and the insects. It's not just about getting to the place. It's not even about surviving once you're getting there. It's about being able to survive and reproduce generation after generation, and that increasing.
And so much of that is about kind of being really good at what you do. Rabbits are really good at converting grass into rabbits.
Yeah.
Wasps are really good at converting our native insects into more wasps.
And stoats, oh God, look at them. Pregnant before they're born.
Yeah. Seems like a hard life.
It does. But anyway, how is your work helping?
So I guess I don't do much about mammals. A lot of what we're interested in is in wasp control, because I think wasps are terrible.
So the whole rabbit introduction was a red herring.
No, so we can come back to rabbits later.
Okay.
Because I think wasps are really problematic, because we have actually good bait solutions and insecticides for them, which are fairly specific, but actually it hasn't made much of a dent in wasps. And with climate change, wasps eat. There's the chance of surviving to adulthood if you're an insect in our west coast forests,
where these forests, huge populations are,
is zero. Right, basically
God.
They're eating all our insects, and then that is that's the bottom of the food pyramid for the birds and the stoats that eat them, obviously. So it's a really serious problem, and everyone hates wasps, and so we're thinking about the really nasty end of genetic technologies to try and control them. So these are technologies called gene drives. Genetically modified wasps, which go out there and spread something bad through the population and cause that population to collapse.
So we're really thinking Hunger Games here.
Yeah, it is a very I appreciate people might go, oh my God, there's this guy genetically modifying wasps, and he's gonna release these. This work we're doing in containment. These things can't get out. But we're trying to see if this is actually effective, and if it's effective, and if it's safe, and if actually it will do the things we want it to do.
And wasps are not just the German wasps and the English wasps that we think of as pests. There's a whole whole massive group of
Many
native,
of them are
indigenous,
really good.
and wasps that we don't, as lay people, I guess, think of as
Yes,
wasps.
yeah.
They're insects that are out there.
Yeah.
Of course, they are wasps. They're part of that larger group, but they're not those two specific species that we think of as pests.
Yeah, and that's part of our problem is that if when you spray insecticides, which are the main thing we use to control insects, then you kill all of those wasps. What we're trying to do is find very specific ways of just targeting the common wasp and the German wasp, and some of you might know there are paper wasps in the country which have also been introduced that we think are really damaging. So that's in our lab we're trying to work out, can this be done? Because the only people who've ever really generated gene drives have done it in mosquitoes and in fruit flies.
Right. And did it work in them?
It works really well, but fruit flies and mosquitoes are
Not
300 million years away from wasps.
Wow.
So
300 million years?
Yeah, so that's
So are they earlier or later?
I think wasps are older than flies, but that's the distance between us and reptiles. So that's like us trying to
really, really different.
Yeah, we're trying to understand these wasps it's as if we were trying to understand human reproduction by studying tuatara.
Yeah, that's crazy. I really didn't realise that they were that.
So it's real
separated.
hard. This is really hard. So we're doing that. We're doing it in containment to try and see if it's safe. And on the other side, another part of the project is actually talking to people out there in communities, particularly people who have to indulge in wasp control, to say, Hannah, how do you deal with wasps? Do you need new tools? Here's some tools that might be possible. What do you think about them? Because of course in New Zealand we have mana whenua who have this place-based kind of rohe, the areas that they're responsible for, the kaitiaki for. And if I release a wasp in one of those, it's going to fly to another one. So we have to think about how we might have indigenous governance of gene drives and these sorts of technologies. So we have lots of people out there asking questions, trying to work out what people think about these technologies. And interestingly, everyone hates wasps.
Yeah.
And so new tools for killing wasps are really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of easy to see because there's no economic advantage to them.
No.
There's no ecological advantage to them.
Absolutely not, yeah.
There's really no reason that we would want to have them here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yep.
So
they are quite nice when in the place where they come from. They act as pollinators and they act as scavengers, so they'll remove things, but they don't grow to the massive numbers that they grow here. Here they're economically damaging. Apparently, $1 million of car accidents a year are caused by wasps.
Wow, because it gets in the driver goes
No, it's them joyriding. The wasps get in the window and no, exactly. People freak out because of the wasp in the car. They obviously eat bees, so massive impact on the bee industry. Apparently 10% of hives in the North Island.
So introduced honeybees.
Yep, introduce honeybees, which will also be savaged by hornets if they establish.
Right.
And then because they're eating bees, that reduces clover pollination. Clover is required for dairy production, and so there's a knock-on effect. So there's lots of reasons to get rid of them. Everyone hates them. So we thought this is a model, and we work in insects, we could try and get at these things. So that's one of the big projects we do. And I guess that once you start working and kind of controlling these things, you start getting into other bits of pest control. And I guess that's where rabbits come in, which really isn't my work. But I guess what we've been doing in this country for a long time is this predator-free 2050 thing.
Yes, yep.
So the idea that actually can we wipe out all of these predators, and the targets are possums, rats,
mustelids.
Yeah.
And I think rats come in as well.
Yeah. And
There's some debate about whether feral cats are in or out.
Yeah, should be in. But I think so people say, you're doing these gene drives in wasps. Do you think you could do them in rats? Do you think you could do them in possums?
Yeah.
And my answer is actually, I'm not sure we can, because rats and possums don't breed fast enough. And
Do
also,
they not really?
We have no.
Rats breed really fast.
Yeah, even so, it's just mammals don't seem like a good target for gene drives because of that.
Really?
But we actually have good tools out there. So when I get asked, a few months ago I was asked to write a thing about predator-free 2050, and I kind of said, hey, I like this idea, but the problem is boundaries, right? It works really well when you can fence off something like Orokonui,
Right.
or something like the peninsula where you have the Otago Peninsula where you have
You've sort of got Vauxhall there, which is quite a solid boundary.
You can use Vauxhall to stop the possums getting back in.
Yeah.
Then that kind of works, but I wrote this thing saying, look, I don't see how we're going to do that on Fiordland, right? How are we
because
going
it's
to
a
do
bigger,
this?
open system.
How are we going to defend it?
Yeah.
And then these guys called Zero Invasive Predators called me up and said, can you come and look at what we're doing? So they invited me up to...
What are they doing?
So Zero Invasive Predators, I think they're part of the Predator Free 2050 movement. They've got a bunch of projects in Nelson and in the Mackenzie country and in the West Coast on the other side.
Right.
And so they're trying to see whether, rather than... what we do about in Dunedin is if we have possums, we spread 1080 and we try and kill them.
Or we trap them. Yeah, so all the urban area is basically trapping, and the Halo project does a lot of trapping.
But it's suppression. So what we're trying to do is reduce the numbers so they cause less damage. And we know that in 6 years' time we might have to do it again, and in 6 years' time we might have to do it again.
Whereas the peninsula has gone for let's get rid of all of them.
And that's what Zero Invasive Predators are doing.
And that means that it may be more expensive at the time because the last couple of percent are very difficult to get, but it means once you've done it, then your maintenance goes way down because you just have to keep them from coming in.
Exactly.
So you've got that monitoring and that keeping them from coming in, but you don't have to massively reapply that, whatever it is, 1080 trapping, whatever, across the whole zone.
Poisons, basically.
Yeah.
So
trapping. People do still do trapping.
That's true. Yeah. But you can't do trapping on the massive scales you need for these sorts of environments, like forests on the West Coast, or the Mackenzie country. So these guys are doing exactly what you said. They're going, let's not suppress populations, let's wipe them out.
Right.
Let's do this in places where we have sort of defendable boundaries. Maybe there's a river or a mountain that means that things can't get across.
Which, of course, comes from the whole island eradication, right?
It is,
We've done it on small islands, and the islands have got bigger and bigger and bigger, offshore islands, and then we've started trying to do it with mainland islands, like Orokonui Eco Sanctuary.
Yeah. But so these guys are saying, rather than putting a fence around things, we will have a river up here and maybe a river down there.
Or a really high mountain range.
And we'll just do this very strong eradication to start with, and then put lots and lots of monitoring in to see what happens and to mop up the survivors and to try and deal with incursions from outside the area that you've treated.
Right.
And so I thought, this sounds difficult. And then so I went up and saw their operations in the Mackenzie country. And those of you who've been to the Mackenzie country know that it's pretty rough up there.
And vast.
And I thought, so it'll be the Mackenzie, it'll be the sort of flat stuff. But no, the thing they're working on is the block of land between Mount Cook and Tekapo. So very mountainous terrain.
Yes, because Mount Cook, being part of the Southern Alps, is a fairly good boundary for most things.
So when
there are a few things that want to cross that boundary, right?
And then on the other side, they actually go up to the main divide and then over it into the West Coast.
Right.
And so they've done all of these quite large blocks around places, famous places like Okarito. This year, apparently, they're doing Mount Cook Village and Mount Cook itself.
Oh, right.
And they're controlling possums and rats and stoats, and in the Mackenzie country, they're also doing rabbits.
Right.
Now, my dad always used to say to me that he was told when he was a kid that if you want to, when you went to the Mackenzie country, if you clap your hands, then all the rabbits would run, the hillsides would run away.
Yes, I've seen that.
I think it came from what's his name, John Wellman. I think the guy who discovered the southern. The Great Southern Fault and things. So this was this idea that actually there were so many rabbits that the whole hillsides would run away. And so when somebody said to me, so we're controlling rabbits in bits of the Mackenzie country, I said, this is a joke. But actually they are.
Right.
They have managed to, in some of their blocks, they haven't done rabbits on the whole block so far, but they have demonstrated pretty clearly that they can reduce the rabbit population to zero.
Wow.
In particular areas. And it's not... fancy genetics from me. It's not cleverness other than having poisoned and then mopping up the survivors using drones and hunters to identify the possum, to identify the survivors and deal with them.
The individuals, get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've done that with rats, and they've done that so this is a huge experiment that I don't think people know enough about.
I don't think either, because that sounds amazing. And I mean, the thing is, if you can do it somewhere, then not all, but a large portion of the resources that were going year after year into keeping that population down then get released to move on to the next block.
Exactly, and that's what they're doing.
And you just join that on, and you've got your existing boundary already, and you just enlarge it in one direction or the other, however you go.
Yeah, and I do think there's lots. I mean, as scientists, it's really easy to get bogged down in the details and go, well, have you really got rid of every rat? You really got rid of every last one? And I'm not sure that the data is strong enough to say, we really know that. But they put out lots and lots of camera traps. They have laws that bring in. So they're doing their best to try and say, we don't see if there are rats or possums in these areas, we don't see them. We can't find them, and we have really good laws. And
presumably also monitoring, for instance, obviously moths, but the insects and the plants that are also there, because if they're responding as though there are no rabbits there, then
you've won. Doesn't matter. So I think
to a certain extent you've won, right?
Yeah.
And your minimal amount of shooting and trapping that keeps it zero, and your continued monitoring. Honestly, I can't stress enough how important monitoring is. And it feels in a way, and I think it's that whole thing of impatience in people. They just want to get out there and shoot things or get rid of things or do things or manipulate things, and then they're done, and then walk away. It's done.
Yeah.
But really monitoring, you have to do it beforehand. What's the problem? What's the scale now? Have we seen a difference one way or another? And then continue that on to show the difference.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is the crucial thing. And I think with these things where we're really experimenting to see if this will work, you then have to monitor really hard to say, a rat will come across a river, or a stoat will come across a river, or a road bridge, because there's a road running through these things. So you will get some incursions, and you want to see them, and you want to be able to deal with them.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The actual measure of success is, the birds are breeding. There's more kiwi.
The insects, I think I said, not the
insects. The plants. And apparently that's the case. There are more kia up in those mountains. There's now more kiwi. So they've done down Okarito, where they've got kiwi nesting. Kiwi nesting is going up, and that was a big news story.
Can I just check? Is it Okarito or Okarito?
It could be Okarito. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That's what I do. I learn every day. But I think that gives me hope. So actually, what I wrote about Predator Free was, it's never going to happen. But now I think with these sorts of things, and the crucial thing is not necessarily they've made all of these cool technologies and new ways of thinking about these things. But the crucial thing is the strategy, rather than we're suppressing pests. It's we're eradicating them.
Pests,
we will not.
It's the mindset.
It's the mindset. That's why I think the peninsula thing is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, it's get rid of the possum. We never have to worry about them again.
And then you can put all that resource into rats.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Just move through the species, and then once you've done that, actually let's do the city. Let's do Long Beach and the other side.
I mean, because wouldn't it be amazing? I mean, I imagine for the peninsula, the most likely place that something re-invades is actually from West Harbour.
Yes.
Across the islands, or from West Harbour into the peninsula. I mean, they might get through at Vauxhall, but the harbour's actually relatively narrow there at places. Imagine if we could get all of West Harbour done as well.
Yeah.
And then we're right up to the boundary of Orokonui, right? And so the safest way to keep Orokonui, for me, I'm a big fan of, and people who've listened to this podcast on a regular basis will know I'm a big fan of castles in Trudeau. And they have the Castle Keep, which to my mind is Orokonui, where you have the strongest defences, and you put all your wives and daughters and whatever and skilled craftspeople in there, and then you have what they call a killing field around that.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a bailey, and then there's a killing field, but it's basically there's this kind of bit where
an empty bit where you can
kill kill the invaders. Yeah. And I kind of and that kind of idea of the most effective way of keeping Orokonui safe is to cut down the number of invasive species banging against the fence trying to get in.
Exactly.
And that's, that's kind of...
Yeah, that's if we can... And that's what they seem to be doing on the West Coast, is thinking, we've done this block between this river and this one. River. We're done. Let's move down.
Yeah. And then bring in the monitoring behind it so we can see
that it's happened.
And of course, when you've got that constant monitoring, as soon as something comes in, before it gets up to plague again... You can hit it. You can knock it on the head straight away.
And their monitoring is really cool.
What's cool about their monitoring?
It's AI-driven cameras, right? So they have these camera traps up there. They've discovered new lures that possums really like, and they really like them. New lures? Yeah, lures. Lures.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh,
no, not the possum lures. The lures.
I was thinking these are really well-read possums.
I have a weird accent. So they put the camera traps out, and they have the lures, and they have the thing, and the possums will come in. And
now the lures. Yeah. Is that where chocolate comes into it?
Mayonnaise.
Oh, it's mayonnaise. I thought it was like some sort of Oreo chocolate.
Oh, well, that was. I don't think that was the same guys, but it was.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was.
No, I can't remember. That's why I thought
cinnamon,
chocolate.
And most possums
love cinnamon. So when we're putting blaze out, we mix a little bit of flour so it sticks to the area around.
Yeah.
Some icing sugar so it's sweet, and cinnamon.
Nice. And
spray it around and I just flick it around.
Yeah, well, apparently possums love mayonnaise. I saw this fantastic...
It's kind of eggy.
I think that's what... when you think about it, right?
What is mayonnaise made of? Chicken eggs?
Yeah, it's there's protein, there's fats in there. It's the perfect food for mammals.
I can see it, eh? Yeah.
So with that and these cameras, which the AI in them isn't complicated, all it's doing is it's not sending you any information. It's identifying the picture by the camera.
Right.
So the camera can go out in the environment and just sits there taking images.
Yeah.
But it only tells you that it's taken a picture of something important when the AI says, that's a possum.
Right.
So it's the image recognition, and then it...
So every time a leaf moves, it doesn't send you a picture, then it's not running down the battery, basically, and then it sits there longer. Yeah. Right.
So the monitoring is very cool, and I think that I think they have a lot of monitoring to do, and I think there's lots of skeptical people, and we need to recognise that it does matter if it's eradication or there are a few still around there. I think that still needs to be proved. But I think the mindset gives you the opportunity.
Yeah, but that threshold between 0 and 1 is really big. It's a big jump.
Exactly.
And I think it's good to try and get over that threshold.
Yeah, if they could get to the position where actually you had predator-free South Island, that would be incredible. Absolutely incredible. And the fact that they're doing it on that block of land, which is the most pointy and spiky and mountainous in the country, I think that's really incredible.
It is incredible, and it's ambitious, but it also seems that it's a good choice because it does have a very hard boundary.
Yeah.
And even more on the West Coast because it's got the mountain range on one side and the ocean on the other, and a very short distance between them. Whereas the Canterbury Plains are rather longer.
Yeah, and filled with cows. Yeah. So I think I am hopeful now. So as a scientist, my job is really to develop next year's control methods, or the year after, or 20 years' time.
And we should talk a bit more about gene drives and about the genetics behind it. At some point I should try and weave eggs into the conversation because I promised chocolate rabbits and eggs.
We have to if you want to make transgenic wasps, you have to inject their eggs.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah, so we're having to... the poor people in my lab spend their time making tiny glass needles finer than a human hair and then injecting...
Wow, so you make your own needles?
Yeah, we have to make our own needles. No one will make them for us. We have a machine with a laser.
So you make a tiny little rod of glass and then throw a laser through the middle of it to make a hole?
It's like a little tiny tube of glass. We fire the laser in the middle to heat it up and then pull... as you pull the end parts, the glass narrows until you get, and we do it in a very controlled way so we can adjust the length of that needle and the width.
Wow! And then what are you doing? So how does the genetics actually look?
Yeah, so wasps are very odd. You and most of your listeners will have received half your genome from your mother and half from your father, right? That's how genetics kind of works.
Yep.
Wasps don't do that. So if you're a female wasp, you get
Yeah.
half from your mother and half from your father. But if you're a male wasp, you only got half a genome, and it comes from your mother.
Oh, right. So
Right.
it's not an XY, XX situation.
It's not. It's fertilized.
It's an X.
Yeah. So same with
XY
honeybees.
situation, and the XY is the female.
It's
If you want to say
it's
so.
even strange. They don't have
Yeah.
sex chromosomes at all.
Right, okay.
Basically, females are diploid. They have two copies of their genome.
Right, one from their mum, one
One
from
for their dad. Males are haploid. They have one copy. So males come from unfertilized eggs.
Eggs. Oh, right.
So that's the same for honeybees. And
So if there was no sex, there would just be male bees. Male wasps, sorry.
yes, yeah. If we could disrupt that process, we could just produce male wasps. Or so that's one of the things we're thinking about. Is here's
Gosh, isn't
here's
that
the thing.
odd?
Yeah. So all of the Hymenoptera, which is the bees and wasps and ants, sawflies, weird shit like that, they are all haplodiploid. They have this weird sex-determining system. So all the genetics we know about in humans or in rabbits or in fruit flies doesn't really work very well.
Right, and I
because
guess
of this
that's
weird
why
system.
it's more difficult to take wasp-learned genetics and then transplant them into rabbits, because
Yes, yeah.
it's just a totally different system.
It's just so annoying, right? Why would they do this? So that means is that
it's
we
kind
have
of
to we have to think about this weird genetics, and that genetics drives the way we have to make these gene-drive systems, but it also gives us opportunities, because if we could mess up that system, so if we could make it so that no female wasp was ever fertilized, then she would only produce males.
Right.
And so if we could mess up, for example, sperm development, then you would never have this. You would the populations would collapse because you could only produce male wasps.
Right. But then wouldn't random mutations and evolution just mean that the one that
Would be selected for.
would be selected for
Yeah.
hard, and then eventually it would just go away?
So that's the magic. The secret sauce in a gene drive is that what we're putting in to the genomes of these bees into their genes is a little
Into the
cassette
wasps, not
into
bees.
wasps. Sorry,
Sorry.
definitely not bees.
Not bees,
Into
wasps.
into wasps. Is actually copies and pastes itself every generation, and so it spreads through the population. Despite if it's being selected against, it will still spread through the population, and if it's or this complicated in genetics, right? If you put something in to a gene, then only half the offspring will get that gene, right? Because Mendel's 3-to-1 ratios and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it messes that up too, and so every offspring will get that little cassette of DNA.
How does it do that?
So it's using this thing which won the Nobel Prize a few years ago, which is a CRISPR-Cas system, which is a way of cutting and pasting a piece of DNA.
Which is one of the few Nobel Prizes that has gone to a female in the history of the Nobel Prizes.
And rightly so.
my
I mean, not that
No,
not many
wrongly
females.
so, but rightly that she
rightly
got
so
it.
for those people. I
Sorry.
I was furious when
Rosalind Franklin, I shall never, ever, ever let it go that you did not receive your Nobel Prize.
Well, so that's an interesting one. So this is a really sore point, right? Because
we're really diverting on a rabbit hole here, but
Maurice Wilkins got the Nobel Prize.
he should never have got it.
And he's a New Zealander. He's one of the few New Zealanders who
sorry.
got a Nobel Prize. But Rosalind Franklin actually died before the Nobel Prize was given. And so I would really like to know if they would have given it to Rosalind Franklin if she was alive. She deserved it, absolutely. She was absolute genius. Yeah. So it's sad that she didn't get it. But I do like the question of whether that was sexism or she just died at the wrong time is a good one. It probably was sexism, to be honest.
I mean, even that, I think that this whole posthumous thing is...
It's weird, isn't it?
It's weird.
Like you can't have a Nobel Prize if you're dead.
And it really, just to get on my little soapbox here a little bit, it really differentially affects females because they get recognised so much later in their careers in general for work that they've done. And the CRISPR example is an exception.
Yes,
that proves the rule
Jennifer.
because it was just such a big discovery and so important in so many areas. But in general, it takes longer, and that's all the way through academia. And you can see it in when people become professors, when their research gets recognised, and all the way through. And then, of course, those delays mean that, of course, you're more likely to be dead.
Yeah. I mean, I find this really remarkable because when, in my field in genetics, the students in my classes, I think we're up to 85% women. Most of my PhD students that I've taught in my career.
It's because it's a lab-based field.
Is it really? Yeah.
It's because it's a lab-based field. It fits in with various other attributes that females have. Anyway,
but it's weird that most of my PhD students have been female. Most of my undergraduate students are female, and then when you get up the other end, it's this.
It's like the knitting community. Most knitters are female. Not all, but most knitters are female. The one knitting show on TV. Is it a female? No. Go through the major designers. Are they females? No. So there's this really weird
but he's
thing.
Lovely.
He's lovely. And I absolutely adore him. And I think it's great that he knits. But there's something systematically wrong with our society that's the system. Anyway, we are just about out of time. We've
gone a long way.
Yeah. We've gone a long way. Thank you very much for joining us for the Easter special here, Peter Deerden.
Well, hopefully that's been useful. And I love comments. So if you want to get hold of me, I'm on Blue Sky. You can find me. I'm on a podcast called Under the Lens, which you can find on all your podcasty thingies, which is about biosecurity and other things. And I have a Substack you can find me on where I write things about rabbits. So, please reach out if you want to hear more.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, that sounds amazing. And have a happy Easter, I guess. You've been listening to the OI podcast with Dr Barb in conversation with Professor Peter Deerden from the University of Otago, talking chocolate, rabbits and eggs. More about rabbits, really, and a little bit about wasps for our Easter Good Friday special. Don't forget the by-election OI special has gone live. It's up there. Download those episodes. Listen, and if you haven't enrolled, www.vote.nz. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the OI podcast, the shout out for the arts, sciences and mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI podcast on OAR FM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.